Hello, adventurers, and welcome to a technical welcome to a Zulu's D&D stream. If you notice that there are two versions of these, and that's because there was a slight hiccup, but we've managed to iron out the details. It's always fun when you get an update just before you go live.
Ah, yes.
Alex, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well today. How are you doing, Rob?
Not so bad. As many of you can probably see, we are of course missing Jason, which is we lament gently, but it's only because he had to go pick someone up from the airport, I think.
I think he had to drop someone off at the airport.
Ah, there we go. So yes,
Yeah.
he's not dead. He just has things that he has to do that take precedent over having delightful conversations with the group of us. Um,
Adulting. Adulting for real.
yeah, right. For those of you who were here last week, we weren't here. That's because we were in the midst of doing what is this thing's called? A
D&D Summer Camp 2021.
That's the one.
Yeah. I had a fun time with it. How about you, Rob?
I had a great time. We did so in the camps that we do. It's a week of D&D. We'll usually have in a given day two sessions, so a morning and an afternoon. Well, morning-ish, 1 to 3, and then 4 to 6 are the two time slots. And the kids can sign up for either one of the days or all 10 of the sessions if they really want a lot of D&D in their life.
We actually do have a lot of kids who buy all of the morning sessions or buy all of the evening sessions, and it's a fun time.
If I had to guess, I would say that they're probably not buying it, but their parents. But who's to say?
I think it's the kid wielding their credit card, just yelling, take my money.
Yeah, take my parents' money. I want D&D. So, because it is a full week of Dungeons & Dragons for some of the kids, we try to sort of break up what exactly we're doing. So obviously we start with character creation. We do have adventures in there, but we tried to...
We also send them through all different DMs. Like we actually had like 4 DMs total, so we're like, yes, go experience all of the D&D. So if they played that for multiple days, they got multiple DMs.
Yeah. Last camp we did was in spring break, I think.
It was the spring break in April or late March. We did have a spring break camp.
Yeah. So the spring. Sorry, I'm pulling up the thing so we can actually see our feet. So the spring break camp's theme was chimeras, creatures that were like a combination of a couple of different creatures being brought together to make this sort of bestial form. That was a lot of fun. They did some classes where they were actually building their monsters. Those monsters were then set into arena to fight off different things and then try desperately to survive.
I mean, my monsters, I just had them going to hunt down the king and just consume the king.
Oh yeah.
It was wonderful.
Yeah, I had an arena that they had been sort of stuck in, and then they were released from, and got to sort of like exact revenge on their captors, which was a lot of fun.
That's so cool.
Yeah, it was fun. But this year, our theme for the camp was sort of monstrous races, things like goblins, kobolds, hobgoblins, lizard men. What else am I saying? Kobolds, bugbears, orcs, for goodness sake.
Orcs, oh my gosh, of course.
So it was sort of, normally you'd be fighting orcs, goblins, kobolds, but this time you are the orcs, goblins, and kobolds, kind of switching it around. We had a lot of fun with that. And it kind of continued. Say again?
There were some groups that ended up fighting against the human paladins. Oh, those horrifying beasts.
Yeah.
It was great.
Yeah, so it was a lot of fun. We also... So we had the adventures where they got to play as their characters, but then we also did a couple of other things. Jason did some work building villains. Those villains then were brought to me, and we made layers for them. So places where they could sort of, do their diabolical scheming. Working on kind of a better understanding of traps and its various different iterations, layer actions, how they work, what's going on with it. So when it gets to these sort of things, I always like to try and do it a combination of sort of informative but also fun. And some of them ended up being really zany and interesting. I had one that was a mind flayer that would play a mimic. He had a flying mimic piano that he would just play, and then the whole room was full of mimics, and he would sometimes just fly around the tower playing the piano mimic, which was delightful.
Not gonna lie, that adventurer actually did tell me about that about the lair that he built, and he was so excited about it. And I was like, "Oh my gosh, that's amazing!" So I'm actually incorporating that into a couple of other of the groups, and I need to talk to him and be like, "Hey, how do you want to flesh out this one shot with the Mind Flayer's tower?"
Yeah. So what's funny was that particular group ended up fleshing. So they had their five. There were five of them in total. Each of them had their sort of different villain. One of them was actually a thieves guild, which was kind of fun. There was a dragon. There was a lich. So there's this wide variety of things, and at some point it was mentioned the possibility of them sort of living relatively close to each other, where the layers were within essentially arm's reach. And there was even talk of tunnels connecting them, which then got to the point where we escalated. We were like, well, what if there was like, what's the supreme sort of overlord of these five sort of villains? So it ended up being a half gold, half red Dracolich, which we'll not get into the details of exactly how that happened. But
This happened.
it happened, and that was a lot of fun too, because each of the five other villains got to contribute a trap to that villain's lair. So it was this sort of combination of like all of their sort of powers combined to create this one sort of thing. And then I realized you've got all these villains in this place, and that's too many villains. So this is clearly a domain of dread. So we ended up sort of getting to build a domain of dread around this group. It was all in all, it was a delight.
That's yeah. I definitely had a whole bunch of fun, just having the kids go through some crazy zany adventures.
Are
And
is
yeah,
there such a thing as a not crazy zany adventure that you've run?
I don't know. What is the most normal sounding adventure? They walk on the road and see some bandits. I guess that's the most normal.
See,
Uh,
but that's the thing. The seeing the bandits isn't where it goes off the rails. Because I can bet you dollars to donuts you've definitely had times where there've been bandits on the road, and then it got weird.
well, there's definitely yeah. Actually, in one of my sessions today, they were just walking through the forest and they saw some bandits. They're very high power, or they're very powerful, high level wizards, or they call themselves wizards. None of them are actually wizards; they're all just spellcasters, but they like to call themselves the three wizards. Basically, they absolutely like finish. They just demolished these bandits. They did not stand a chance at all, and they're just like, "Bow, bow, magic," and it's like, oh yeah, they're just dead. They're not doing anything. They can't fight you. They can't even like stand up against you. Like
Yeah.
they're just dead.
Well, that's actually one of the things that I find kind of fun sometimes is so in a video game RPG, a lot of times you'll have that kind of the thing where you'll go from zone to zone and you'll sort of level up with it, or just straight up the monsters will sort of match you in level. So I don't feel like there's as much of a time where you get to feel like, yeah, I'm this awesome sort of warrior. I can take out these things because they sort of match your power level. That's not necessarily true of like a game like World of Warcraft, where you can go back to lower level zones and do a murder. I feel like
Or
as a dungeon. Oh, sorry, say again.
or D&D where you could literally just walk anywhere you want and you're like, ah, you're a townsfolk? Yeah, I'm more powerful than you.
Well, that's the thing. A lot of times, I think a trap that I'll run into, even myself as a DM, is I will sort of scale the encounters to the players, whereas is sort of allowing the sort of the challenge of things to be a little bit more fluid and to just be like, yeah, no, this is really really hard. You don't want to fight these people, and if they pick a fight, then they get the tar kicked out of them.
Yeah,
Um, so
it just happens. It
yeah.
happens from time to time. There's definitely been some like fights where like they'll just be like, no, 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 I can totally take this thing on, and then they'll like continue, and they're like, oh no, I'm gonna run away now,
Yeah.
or like what some of my most powerful adventurers are gonna like see something, and they know something that's extremely powerful, even though they can easily handle it, and they're all the players are just like, yeah, no, that terrifies me, and it's like they're like level at the time they were probably like would be like level 14 barbarian, level 14 wizard, fighter and druid or whatever,
Mhm.
and they see like a young dragon, like it's a dragon.
Yeah.
They can absolutely demolish a dragon.
Well, especially a young one, because those are around CR6, I want to say.
Yeah, depends on the dragon.
The difficulty, of course, would be if they had no way of flying or doing ranged attacks. Then they just like, and then I'd leave, and the dragon's like, all right, cool. I mean,
Yeah.
so.
But when you're that high level, you're obviously a master archer, and you can just find the
or
one
have a way to fly.
Of course.
Yeah. So last week was the camp. The week before that was the release of the new. Actually, no, that was that Friday. Was the release of Adventures in the Forgotten Realms. Sorry, Dungeons and Dragons release. Adventures in the Forgotten Realms. The D&D Magic set, Magic the Gathering
crossover.
Yeah.
Oh, I've been playing a whole bunch of that.
Yeah.
I've been playing a whole bunch of that on Arena, and there is like so much cool stuff. Ooh, I got my book.
Yeah. So this is a really fun thing that they came out with it. So it's a fun sort of combination of both things. You've got some card
like just sleeves or like places where you can put your cards.
Sleeve pages. I don't know what these are called actually.
Yeah, they're pages for they're pages.
And then there is graph paper at the back. It's a good chunk of graph paper too. So
I've already started using yours. Way to go!
Oh yeah. Are you kidding? It's a notebook of graph paper. That is delightful. Now the weather-eyed or the eagle-eyed viewers may have noticed that I do actually have some cards in here. These are the basic lands from the set. And actually, oddly enough, I don't know if they did this on purpose. There are 20 sleeves, and there are 20 basic lands, each of which has what I would very lovingly call sort of an adventure prompt.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that would be fun today, is to sort of use some of these adventure prompts to talk about how you can take such a small sort of nugget of an idea and let it sort of blossom into something bigger. Now, it doesn't necessarily have to be the start of an adventure. There's one of them that I'll probably mention by the end of this that would make a beautiful end to an adventure. So let's go ahead and just dive right into it. There are 20 of these cards. You have a D20 in front of you?
I do indeed.
Give me a roll. What's our number?
Oh my god! Natural 20.
Look at you.
Perfect.
So
I'm
these
just gonna
just gonna be the winner on this one.
natural 20. Gotta prove it, right? Yeah. Here. Oh my gosh, that is beautiful.
And it's even got the D. No, that's a what dice is that?
The ampersand. So it's it's some D20 that I found somewhere, and I'm like, sweet, it's the ampersand.
Yeah. So I don't have these in numerical order. I believe numerical order it's white, blue,
black, red, and then green.
I have them in a slightly different order.
That's fine.
So in this particular case, let's see. We're gonna.
I always have whenever there's like a D&D list that I look at, sometimes I will just go out of order, or I'll have a list and just be like, okay, cool, here you go. But
yeah.
Sometimes the most powerful is at the top or bottom.
So, as you make camp near the ancient ruins, you hear the sounds of drums echoing in the halls where no dwarf has lived in generations. Now, you don't have to do the dramatic reading, but it is a lot of fun.
I think that's more of a requirement. You have to do the dramatic.
I got some of the land pictures for some of the lands. I didn't get all of them, unfortunately, because I was pressed for time. But yeah, you have this delightful sort of thing where it looks like you've got. Let's see how this is. The theater of the mind. So
cool.
The mountains reach up towards the skies, broken in half, held the top half of the mountain held aloft by what appears to be the support arches of some ancient forgotten civilization. What I love about this is it's a combination of two things. Firstly, the prompt is so delightfully evocative, and secondly, the image itself shows clearly a place that has been sort of changed by the dwarves in so many ways.
Not even necessarily changed by the dwarves. It sounds like to me dwarves used to live there, but then now dwarves haven't lived there for ages, and so then there could be either dwarves returning or something else that's living there.
Yeah, actually, so let's go ahead and dive right into it. So first thing that pops into your head, what does this evoke for you?
Well, so I'm in the mountains, right? And so I've heard that there's some strange noises that there shouldn't be those noises, right?
Yes.
Obviously, so obviously, like that'll either be like a trap for the players or something for the players to discover. Like maybe there's actually a missing clan of dwarves, and they've just been gone for centuries,
Ooh,
and
but
they're
why?
just
But
so out
why
of
were they
touch.
gone?
Why were they gone? Because there was probably a goblin attack of some sort, or
Okay.
maybe the goblins worked with the orcs and they teamed up together to like
Ooh.
actually annihilate most of the dwarves. Or we could even like hobbit it up and just say that there was a dragon that like wiped out most of the dwarves,
Okay.
and they have been in hiding because of the dragon.
Okay. And so the drums in this particular case are the drums of the dwarves.
The drums could be they could be drums of the dwarves, or we can go completely opposite route and say that these are drums of something that is taking over, kind of like a nurse log sort of thing, where it's like, oh, this is just this group of people that are like, this is a safe place, might as well live here.
Yeah. So okay, I like it.
What does this
So
invoke for you?
say again. Oh,
What
for
does it
me.
invoke for you? Yeah.
So I don't know. So it mentions, so we're making camp. Um, so presumably the sorry, it mentions making camp. So presumably the players are going to be there for some sort of reason. So I guess the first question is how did I get the players there? Um, and maybe I foreshadow for the next bit, because the other thing that I really liked about this is, so you hear the sound of drums echoing in the halls where no dwarf has lived in generations. I'm a big fan of Undead. I'm also, I don't know, it's because I've been playing around a lot with sort of the Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft. So that sort of like deeply haunted thing is a lot of fun. I, for some reason, you know what it was? I was also just yesterday was reading about the Amber Temple. So my first thought is, in the same way that like you can have things sort of seep into the stone, like, you know, wax or blood or whatever, I like the idea of like spirits having seeped into the stone itself. And the drums, I don't generally think of dwarves as being sort of the drum beating sarts. I think of orcs, I think of goblins. So my first sort of thought for this thing is that the sort of the spirits of the dwarves and this sort of goblinoid cohort are locked in eternal battle, where every night the final siege of this place is reenacted, which becomes difficult because I would want the players to have to go in there for some reason. I would want there to be some sort of carrot at the end of the stick, because then I've presented them with an interesting challenge of the same things are going to happen every night. The same sort of challenges, and I could you could almost create like sort of a recursive sort of dungeon sort of thing, where essentially they have to learn each room to be able to be strong enough to do it as efficiently as possible to get to the next room, but they can't know what the next room is until they've figured out the first one. And then of course there'd be a mechanic where every time the sun rose, all the doors sort of slam closed and they're shunted out of the dungeon.
Or they could be locked into the dungeon, and then they have to rest inside the dungeon.
Ooh.
Like
And
they
that
have to
would
get
that would
out
essentially save their sort of progress.
like they have to get out before sunrise. Otherwise, they're trapped inside of the dungeon. Or maybe it could be like such a cyclical thing that it's only once a month, so that
Oh,
these
geez,
caves.
so they have to try and make as far as they can, and then wait a month. So that would actually be
If
really
they want,
interesting. Sorry, second.
or like they can only like go in for a certain amount of time, and then once they realize that the sun is about to come up and everything's going to close, it can either be a race against time to get out, or they're just going to be locked in there for a month.
Ha! Oh boy. Oh dear. Oh, that might be really interesting too, because they'd essentially have one. They have a very small sort of area, and then the question becomes: so we're doing. What was the Martian? What are you guys eating? How
Yeah.
are you staying sane for the next month? The month one I actually kind of like as well, because I feel like downtime is something that that D&D players don't often get a lot of. Sorry, the characters.
Oh yeah.
And there's a lot of really interesting sort of juicy downtime mechanics. So sort of building into the thing where it's like your characters only once a month are going to like do things that would require dice rolling. For the rest of that month, they're doing downtime activity. That's particularly potent because one of the things you can do with downtime activity is make magic items. You don't have to go hunting into dungeons to get magic items if you're taking the time to make them. And what can be fun is, since you have, say, a group of people,
That are
you
inside
could
of the dungeon.
have you can increase the amount of man hours you have for a thing. So you have an item that would normally take 4 months to make. You got 4 people working on it, bang, you're down to a month.
Right.
That becomes a little tricky as a DM. You got to consider, like, does everyone need to be able to cast a spell to keep working on it? Where are they going to get their resources for making it? A lot of fun stuff go into it, but I think having that time scale would, I think, be a really fun opportunity to play around with some downtime activity, which I think would be a lot of fun.
Oh, definitely. I think it would be like just a real fun experience, and also just be like, well, you failed. Sorry, you're stuck in here for a month.
Oh man, that'd also be really interesting too, because like you'd have to be essentially coming up with I feel like a sort of like sanity mechanic would need to be implemented of some sort. Like, what is your character doing to not go berserk in a very confined space with a very small amount of people? Obviously, food and water is important, but at higher levels, that becomes sort of negligible. You've got good berry, you've got create food and water.
You're near godlike anyway.
At the higher levels, yeah.
Higher levels.
So I think this adventure, the way we're talking about it, sounds like a mid to higher level tier sort of thing.
What would you say, like 5th through 9th level sort of tier, or?
Yeah, I mean, it really would depend on how you want to do it, but I think with this monthly thing, I think you'd get more out of it if you were slightly higher level.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and roll another d20.
You got it. All right, where did my d20? Fancy d20. Oh, I got a 13.
All right. Ooh, this is actually one of the ones we actually have a picture for this one.
Fantastic.
Provided it doesn't. Oh, interesting. I think I might have figured out why we had some trouble before. I think it needed to revert to a previous setting because the pictures that I made are no longer here.
Oh.
Wonderful.
Oh, wow.
All right. So, venturing beneath the desert sands, you discovered an alien power pulsing with inconceivable energy. And again, the image is just this delightful thing where essentially you've got this giant cavern, mushrooms in the foreground, they're like a green glowing mushroom too, and then in this sort of cavernous area with a bunch of stalactites pointing down like giant stone spears, you have what looks like a sun. Just
is this the plains?
Dangling in the middle? Yes.
Okay. Huh. Well, that's awesome.
So this one's interesting to me because my first sort of thought is this is sort of a culmination of adventure. Like I feel like to me this is the sentence I say at like the second to last session in a story arc leading up to something very sort of epic. So well, I think
we also had like a long time ago we were doing like prompts, or you were giving us prompts, and then we were doing an improv session on it. Yes. Where there was there was this like super powerful like this being from who knows where.
Yes.
Didn't we have this like kind of as a prompt?
I think we did. This is actually something kind of similar. Yeah.
Yeah. So like, oh my gosh, go ahead and watch one of our older videos.
You know what? Let's reverse it then. Strike it, reverse it. This is the first thing that happens.
Of course.
So let's add a little spice to it. I'm always a big fan of the whole sort of being sort of dropped into the middle of an adventure because that's sort of
you gotta just be like, oh, I guess
exactly. So the idea of a group of people who don't know each other waking up in the middle of a desert and realizing that they need to find a way to survive, and that'd also be kind of fun because. Well, no, that actually be sort of the thing is you'd start with them sort of in the scorching hot sun, and then you try to be like you need to get out of the sun to not die, and it's only once they head into the cave that you'd sort of like entice this idea of you feel the pulsing energy of something strong, taking you deeper into the cave.
Yeah.
And then we'd be the big reveal of this sort of alien power, and actually that one would be really interesting too. Ooh. Continue down this road. So I've been playing around a lot with blessings and recently charms.
Nice.
So it could be kind of interesting is to essentially turn this into like their magical benefactor, where instead of going in like a magic item heavy sort of thing, if they perform tasks for this sort of alien power, it gives them charms and blessings. And so essentially you'd have this party of people who's running around with relatively low sort of amounts of equipment, but they would sort of be gaining this sort of innate magical power. And then of course they have to deal with what sort of thing is this? What kind of power is it giving it to them? Is it corrupting them? I think dark gifts are a thing that also was added in Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft, to like start the game with, have this dark power. I think would be really, really interesting for a campaign to run.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, so you were also describing the picture. Are you able to like show the card on camera, or are
kind
you?
of. It might be it. My virtual background is honestly my biggest trouble. Oh,
Gotcha.
oh,
So it's the one that has the sun in the cave, right?
yes,
Okay, so like that could be like that could also be another starting point for like just like coming up with a story based off of the art of a card, like where you're just like, oh, there is an alien power that is this literal sun inside of a cave. So like yes, the that could be like you could go off of the description that the flavor text has, or you could just look at the picture too and just be like, that's cool. I want to stick my adventures in this cave. Or if there's like something else, I could stick my adventures in the middle of this giant tree. There's like I don't think it's like any like in the Forgotten Realms lands, but there's like a very classic forest where it's literally just this giant fat tree. And then there's like a couple other trees behind it, but it's just a really big tree.
yeah.
Yeah.
So you would make this like a set piece kind of thing.
Kind of, and then and so I guess like another little tips and tricks that I can do is like, oh, I can use the art for this card to show, but also read, so
Yeah.
that they can also hear it and see it at the same time.
Yeah, and honestly, having some visual aids I think are very, very helpful. I wonder if I can, how hard it would be for me to. This is probably going to take far too much time. So, you are at the coast, or at the edge of the water. Tentacles burst forth and attempt to draw you in,
Oh gosh.
to bring your end. Now, I can say that, and that's perfectly fine. But if I do this, oh, wait for it. If I do nope. Oh yeah, it doesn't like it when I change cameras sometimes. That's a real shame.
Gotcha. That's totally fine.
Oh,
So if
oh,
you
I've completely angered the machine spirits.
reveal something,
Well, I may not be getting to reveal myself again. No. Oh, because it's trying to. Well, Fooey. Oh, you know what it is? It probably is somewhere else trying to be active. Oh,
is it? It might be active on OBS if you're using it.
I've broken the machine.
Oh no.
That's annoying. Can
We're
you?
still live?
Can I? Yep, we're still live. I
Fantastic.
just my camera has decided to no longer work. Awesome, because
Oh.
it thinks that something else is using it,
Uh,
and I don't know where to turn it off. So all right, well we'll just continue without my face.
sure. I'll
And
just show
that'll.
my face. Oh, you can even like spotlight me, and I'll just be like, ha ha ha.
I'll just be in disembodied voice.
You got it. Also, I'll just be like freaking out, like, oh no, I'm hearing the voice of Rob somewhere. The voices of Rob.
Yeah, I don't know what's been going on. OBS is apparently not happy with what's happening. Well, don't worry about that though. Sometimes technology fights you, and that's not the worst thing.
Hmm. Not necessarily the worst. Cool.
Oh,
Oh, there we
oh,
go. Oh, I was just checking to make sure that everything was still running for Facebook.
oh boy, oh dear. I have very much angered the machine spirit.
Do you want to turn it off and then we like reboot and figure it
No,
out?
it should be fine. Well, oh no, it stopped recording. We are no longer live. I think maybe I don't know.
No, it kind of looks like we're still live.
All right, well, you know what? I'm just gonna not touch it, and we'll continue like this.
Sure. Yeah, all right. I'll just shine my smiling face.
Let's see if we see you doing your shining your smiley face.
Kind of, yeah. I'm just gonna wait
Yep.
around.
All right. Cool. So we're good. So sorry about the technical difficulties. I apparently need to do a lot of restarting, but that's okay. You know what? Let's go ahead and get into the D20 roll. Let's just
Sure. I'll
let's
give you
reset
another
the energy.
D20 roll. All right. Wow. Okay. So remember how I started off on a natural 20? Well, it's not a critical failure, but it's a good old 4. I rolled a 4.
Ooh, here we go. Before the Elf Queen will aid you, you must find a way to cure the strange rot afflicting the roots of the ancient trees. Wait, you say four or one?
Oh, I got a total of a 4. But
Oh,
I like this one. I so it's actually funny with Arena. You actually get whenever you build a new deck, they'll just throw like some land and just be like, ah, here you go. You shows a green deck. Here's some forests. That's actually the flavor text of the default Adventures of the Forgotten Realms on Arena. So I've
okay.
seen this flavor text over and over and over and over again. But yeah, so essentially, you got to talk to the Elf Queen in order to stop or it's pretty sweet because you have to talk to elves. I throw it in my elf deck all the time just because I'm like, haha, elf, it's an elf.
So my curiosity for you is, so if you were running, if this was your sort of adventure prompt, we have why would the players be going to the Elf Queen for aid? Like what sort of aid would they be receiving?
So in my mind, elves are stereotypically really good at like nature and making sure that things are happy with the universe and like things are good, right?
Yeah.
They like to be able to help nature and help things live and thrive. So if I have a group filled with druids for some reason, I'll be like, hey, this part of the world is starting to wither away and start to die. You know who's really good at not making the world wither and die? The Elf Queen. So you got to go talk to her.
Okay. So it might almost be that the two things are sort of connected.
Yeah.
So like the same thing that's afflicting. So okay. So her by you first have to find the solution, and then she'll help you sort of distribute that solution. Okay.
Kind of, yeah. So like, because she's this almighty powerful elf queen, she kind of rules the forest. Otherwise, she could have just like powers of herself, or she might be able to know like how to communicate with like the Fey spirits, go to the Fey, or she might have like some way to go to the Fey Wild, all that great stuff.
Okay. So we're bringing the Fae into it.
Might as well if we're trying to cure a disease. I'm assuming that the Fae could potentially be able to help out with the Fae or with some
The
wild
disease
disease.
stuff. Okay.
Yeah.
I do enjoy on occasion doing a little bit of planar hopping, going kind of to other interesting different places. Especially because, so going back to that kind of idea of matching level to the like challenge to the level of things around you, it's fun sometimes to get like to have that like wildly powerful thing. So like the Archfey, like the Queen of the Unseelie Court or the Seelie Court.
Whatever it is.
Yeah, well, no, both of them, because they're both queens, oddly enough. You have Titania and the Queen of Air and Darkness, who is actually, oddly enough, just a crystal that sort of speaks omnisciently, or omnipresently? Omnipresently.
No
Have you not read about the Archfey? Archfey?
I haven't done too much research on it, but I know that because I don't have that many like warlocks of the Archfey, so I'm like, whatever, it's
Yeah.
cool.
And actually, I think if I remember correctly, those particular tidbits are from the Sword Coast Adventures guide.
I haven't read
Um, yeah, which goes into a little bit more detail about the different patrons and sort of what they're about.
it. Makes sense.
Yeah. You haven't looked at the Sword Coast Adventures guide?
Not too much.
Oh, most of your stuff isn't set in the Forgotten Realms.
Yeah, I don't have that much stuff. I'm
Okay.
like I mostly run a whole bunch of homebrew, but I do pay attention to the Forgotten Realms every once in a while, and still to this day I only have one digital copy of Drist stored, and I just haven't figured how to trade with people yet.
One did wait
One
in
Drist,
Arena?
yeah, I only have one Drist in Arena, and
Oh, you can make more of the cards in Arena, right?
yeah, but I don't need him in my decks.
Oh, okay.
That's
There
the
you go.
problem.
Oh,
Yeah,
so you're trying to trade it to someone to get something else.
yeah, of course. I haven't done that yet.
Gotcha.
Yeah, sorry for the confusion.
It's all good. Um,
Yeah.
so for this particular one, oh, man. So yeah, the thing that I think would be very interesting for this one is like, why are they beseeching the aid of the Elf Queen? Like, what is it the Elf Queen can do that they wouldn't be able to do themselves? Or is it one of those things where what they need to be doing is in her territory, and so not bringing it up to her is an option, but a bad one?
Yeah, I
Um,
like that. I like that idea. Where it's like, hey, we should probably let her know what's going on before we
Yeah,
do it.
yeah. Or is it that that she has some sort of specialty that the players wouldn't otherwise have access to? I mean, obviously royalty is its thing. And that actually, this one would be great for if you had somebody with a nobility background. Although I feel like nobility background is one that is not used very often. But I would love to have, like, I was like, have somebody be like the prince or the duke or the whatever duchess of a place. Because opens a lot of really interesting things. For instance, this whole thing of getting the queen's aid, if you're
Yeah.
just regular adventurers, you don't really, like, queen's aid or whatever, we'll just do it ourselves. But if you're a nobleman, like, that becomes a lot more important.
Like, because then you get to shine and just be like, no, 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 I've grown up talking to royalty. I know how to be royal and hoity-toity fancy boy
Yeah.
or lady or person,
The other
hoity-toity
thing,
fancy person.
the other one that kind of is fun for me is, so strange rot that afflicts the roots of the ancient trees. The first question, very important question is there actually a rot that is afflicting the roots of the ancient trees? Because, fun fact, NPCs can lie. And you'd be surprised how often players don't bother. They're like, I don't know if I trust this person. I'm like, cool. In my head, I'm just thinking, cool, roll an insight, and you'll probably get some information from them. But more often than not, they're just like, I don't trust you, but I'll still go along with you. I'm like, why would you, if you don't
I do
trust
have
them?
I do have a lot of players who are like that. So sometimes I'll really like pretend that he's like, oh yeah, there's totally like an affliction right there, just to really try to be like, you don't want to trust this guy, like to help them out.
Yeah.
But other times it's fun to just trick them and be like, dude, this guy literally set you up. Good job, you just brought him his prize.
Voices in people's heads are one that I mean, the tough sell is a lot of times you'll get the classic one where someone's like, I'm going to pretend to be someone's deity and talk in their head, because the warlock has their ability to,
Awakened mind, where they
yeah,
can just
exactly,
like, yeah.
telepathically communicate. But, like, like, if someone happened, like, I remember very distinctly, oh, it still gets me to this day. Many years ago, I was playing a character who was happening to try and look into an ancient and forgotten art, and so he happened to be able to telepathically communicate over a great distance. And he got a hold of a dragon, or he thought he did. He did technically, but anyway, he thought it was a lightning dragon, and the dragon was like, "Hey, let's meet. We can discuss stuff. Let's do some stuff together. Here's this cave that I need you to meet me at." And I kind of thought, well, that's a little weird, a lightning dragon meeting me in a cave and not on top of a hill where lightning can be. Whatever.
It's fine, whatever.
It
It's
was
totally
Jormungandr, as it turned out. The world serpent was like, he showed up, and I was there, and I was like, what's happening? What's going on? And Jormungandr was like, I lied. I said I was someone else, and you didn't vet it at all. So
oh,
now I'm gonna try and kill you.
oh,
Uh, and that was one where the DM definitely hinted, like, you shouldn't stay here. This is the world serpent. You guys are powerful, but not that powerful.
this is going to kill you.
Yeah.
You are not going to live after this.
So yeah, that was an interesting one. And so there's obviously the route of, it's not real. But then also there's the other fun question of, if it is real, what's causing it? I mean, is it something as simple as a good old fashioned disease is coming in? But then also, what if we didn't necessarily go the combat route? What if this was a colony of myconids that ended up finding themselves a new home, not realizing that them growing was causing trouble? And you can go with the good old-fashioned non-combat option and be like, hey guys, you're killing the trees. Could you leave, please?
Just be the super diplomatic about it.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
like that. Yeah. Have some non-combat stuff going on. Yeah, that sounds really great.
All right, hit me with a D20.
All right, another D20. Haha! I got an 18. So a mountain, right?
Yes. Okay.
All right, so I've got like some real good rolls and some real poor rolls. Got them all over the place.
Ooh, you meant to simply rest in Hundlestone? Hundlestone, but the miners have told you stories of whispers in the dark below. Obviously, mine's also for this one. The image is also again delightful. You got the spine of the world in the background, which is just these giant rocks jutting into the air. But in the
Oh,
foreground, you have actually in the midground, I guess, you've got this giant mountain with some sort of Anasazi village stuff kind of built into the side of a cliff, and then in the foreground, you have a little tiny man with a staff. So I love this one. Just the writing of this one is particularly evocative to me because you meant to simply rest, but the
that's
whispers,
awful.
like I like, oh, that's a fun one to me. Like I love giving players too many options than they have time to deal with, and this is that perfect thing where you're like, you've got a job to do, but there's some stuff in the mountains.
Oh my gosh, I definitely have a tendency to give my players sometimes too many options,
Yeah,
where I will end up having NPCs go take care of some of those options just so then they can have a little bit more of a focus.
yeah, which makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Um, so
Well, maybe.
yeah, so obviously the presenting options. Now, the pitfall of something like this is that by presenting your players with additional options, they may decide, "Nah, I'm good." So you as a DM need to be prepared for them to say, "Nah, I'm good." At which case, your stories of whispers in the dark below becomes relegated to stuff you have prepared for later. Speaking of stuff
Yes.
you have prepared for later, Alex, what is your go-to whispers in the dark below? Stories of whispers. Oh, stories of whispers in the dark below. Interesting.
Of whispers in the dark
Yeah,
below.
yeah.
So like there's like so like there's some sort of monster that they have to go find or something.
Well, that's what I'm asking. So with that simple prompt, whispers in the dark below. What's your first? What's your kind of gut instinct of what that is?
Well, let's see. It depends on how far I want them to go down. Like, if I want them to go Underdark level, then like I'll probably try and find a way to throw some drow in front of them. But if they're just down below, like kind of like how we had a prompt earlier where it was like there was some drumming noises from like like where there were no dwarves and there haven't been dwarves for generations.
You
Um,
hear the sound of drums echoing in halls where no dwarf has lived in generations.
Right. That's where no dwarf has lived, but of course there could have been something else. So maybe there's like some other thing that is trying to run away. It could be just like a random there could just be like a random city that's just kind of chilling. They're just vibing,
Okay. Well, I
hanging
guess
out
then
there.
the question is why have the miners not interacted with them yet?
Maybe the miners are maybe the miners are just weirdos and they're like, no, we don't want to talk to people. And they're just really busy at like or they're just really busy at hacking at the walls and they just don't really want to do anything with people. Maybe they have such a low charisma score that they don't want to talk to people and people don't want to talk to them.
Interesting. Okay, so you essentially in this scenario, what's happened is you've introduced the players to the sort of the weirdos in the attic, and then they're like,
They're in the basement.
no, no, the miners are talking about the whispers of the things below.
Yeah.
So whatever
Isn't
whatever it is this whispering is below them. So
exactly.
you can I like the that's a fun idea too of that whole thing where they're like, oh, there are these weird creepy things that live deep within the area, and you get to the weird things in below, and it's a perfectly fine society of dwarves just sort of living their life perfectly happy. Um,
They're like totally fine with like not
yeah, and they're
really.
like, oh, I'm so sorry you met those guys above us. Wow, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, we don't like our neighbors upstairs.
yeah. So what's funny is so I feel like a lot of times, especially when it comes to creating stories, in many ways I see it kind of like the whole poetry sort of thing, where poetry is meant to use specific words to evoke ideas and emotions, but in so many ways, D&D is based off a sort of zeitgeist of stories that we sort of already have in us. So, for instance, when I hear the line "stories of the whispers in the dark below," my first thought is that invisible spider from Lord of the Rings.
Oh
The
gosh.
idea of this thing that sort of creeps and whispers and but is so impossible to see, and that's something. And I feel like and I might have mentioned this before, but I feel like when you're running games and when you're coming up with stories, sort of evoking things that people know, even if you sort of evoke it next to it, then like people's imaginations start. It's that classic horror thing where if you don't tell them, you don't show them, then people's imagination will come up with so much worse of a thing. So allowing people's sort of like to, even if necessarily a whole group hasn't seen about this giant spider, like the likelihood of someone being like, now remember in Lord of the Rings the giant invisible spider who has a weird elf light.
Yeah. That actually kind of reminds me. So, like, you're talking about how like one of the fun things for horror is to not show, but just kind of have like a scary presence, because the viewer's mind is always more terrifying. Like whatever the viewer imagines is more terrifying than anything you can create.
Yeah.
That actually reminds me of this TikTok series that I have been watching recently, or like that I've been kind of paying attention to, where it's like these people it's this couple that are making an independent film, and essentially for the independent film, they are just like they're living in Michigan, and they hear this very scary like all extraterrestrial monster or something that is actually just terrifying. And every time I watch the videos, I'm like, oh, that's terrifying. Oh yeah, I can't sleep tonight. And then I'll just stay awake for like 3 more hours because I could not go to sleep, because I'm like, what if I hear those voices? What if I hear those sounds?
The sounds.
Oh, what if I hear the whispers from the dark below?
Exactly.
That's terrifying.
Um, I want to mention this one because of these, I think this is the one that I thought was the most sort of delightful. So this is a forest. As the sun reaches its zenith on the day of the solstice, a castle shimmers into view on the hilltop, just as the ancient text predicted. And the picture is beautiful. It's you're in the middle of a forest, and then kind of in the distance, kind of stabbing its way into the clouds, is this delightfully strange castle. Even more strange now that I'm looking at it much closer, is it looks like there was meant to be other things attached to it. So there's like a bridge that goes, but then sort of breaks off.
It's also got a whole bunch of strange, like curved aqueducts of sorts.
Yeah, which is awesome. It actually reminds me a lot of the castle from the Castlevania anime series.
Oh yeah. Oh, totally. What the heck?
Yeah, so that's a lot of fun. It could, and so this to me, I don't know. It asks so many questions that I'd love to try and discover the answer for. For instance, why is it being the solstice is the longest day? Yeah. So
Yes.
like this is the how does this have to do with the sun? Because it's the longest day of the year, and it's at the zenith of the sun's movement. So, like, what is it about the sun that is the thing that either hid the castle in the first place, or is the only thing that will allow it to be revealed? Which makes me very, very excited. The other question is, why did it go away in the first place?
Well,
like, has it been gone for a day, a week, a millennia?
Yeah, I mean, it could a month. It could like for me, hearing the description, it sounds as though it's kind of like the end or the wrap up. Like, so it's kind of like you have already gone through a whole bunch of story to make sure that this castle appeared just as the ancient text had predicted.
Yeah.
So like you went on a quest, you fulfilled your journey.
This is sort of your end credits.
Kind of, yeah. And then you see roll credits.
So the other thing that's kind of fun, kind of playing around the expectations again, which is I feel like a lot of what you do as a DM. So what if it was one of those things where this castle had only disappeared like 6 months ago, but there's this ancient text that talks about the return of this castle, which has up until this point made no sense because this castle has never gone away. And so it's one of those things where like all of a sudden this sort of ancient text becomes relevant, because then that asks the question of how did they know this would happen? I mean, even with obviously the ancient text implies, if you're going with the sort of normal route, that this was a castle that existed in ancient times and has now sort of reappeared.
Yeah, there could or it could be like a very powerful curse, like maybe a powerful wizard or witch was like, nah, I don't like this castle here right now. Bam!
Well, and honestly, what you call it? Oh goodness. Forgotten Realms has a deep and storied past of a sort of ancient incredibly magically powerful civilization that has since gone sort of kaput. That classic sort of hubris, and things sort of backslid a long ways. It's brought up in Rime of the Frost Maiden. There's the whole thing about the ancient things. I think it might have also been brought up a little bit in what's it called? Storm King's Thunder.
Oh, yeah, that would make sense.
So yeah, Storm King's Thunder hangs out there. The Anarok Desert, which is just to the east of the Silver Marches, which is where Storm King's Thunder is based, used to be an ocean. But due to apocalyptic reasons, it has been dried up and turned into a giant desert, filled with old, forgotten races.
Isn't one of like the things in like Forgotten Realms where it's like dragons versus giants? Or am I thinking of something else?
No, yeah, dragons and giants used to tussle. That I think was why rocks came to be. The bird, not the stone.
Oh, okay. I was like, oh, Jesus.
Right?
Old.
Yeah, no. Giants domesticated. I think the legend is that their gods gave them these stupidly big birds to fight against things, or maybe they like it was a alchemical thing that sort of got out of control and just exists now. The details become hazy, but yes, dragons and giants fighting is definitely a thing, which is also a really fun, sort of interesting storyline, especially if you're caught in the middle of it at sort of low to medium level.
And you're like, why are there giants battling dragons?
Exactly, where you're like, I could get involved, or I could stay the heck out of this. Which is then fun because then you get to have that fun thing where like one of the two sides might demand that they work with them or for them for a thing. I'll be honest, I've been watching a lot of Burn Notice recently, and so having someone like blackmail someone into doing things for you, so like the giants are like, we're going to attack, and then you're going to sneak in and steal things from the dragons. So then you have to try and decide, are you going to try and convince the dragons that you're on their side and you're not actually stealing their egg, or why in the first place why were the giants sort of convincing you to do this in the first place? Was it because they captured you? Have they captured something you care about? So these are the interesting questions as a DM you get to answer.
Yeah.
Do you want to do one more roll before we end?
Sure. Yeah, let's do one more roll. Yeah. Have I done a 3 yet?
No.
All right, let's do 3.
Here we go. As you venture deeper into the boughs of the Neverwinter wood, arrows in the tree trunk suggests you may not be welcome.
Oh my goodness. And it looks like the art's got a whole bunch of arrows in the tree trunks. I like this one.
Also, I'll be honest, those arrows look more like target practice to me than anything else. I mean, it could also be kind of a message sort of thing, obviously. So Neverwinter is an interesting place. I always find it very fascinating to look at sort of the geography of the geography of a module like this. So like the Sword Coast Adventurers Guide. The Sword Coast Adventurers Guide essentially is just pages and pages of these things because it talks about all these different things happening in all these different places. I think I read what was it? The Moonshae Isles. I read I think 3 paragraphs and had like 5 different story hooks just from those 3 paragraphs. And that's what I love about the way that they write a lot of these books, and especially with like specific areas, is it's again that delightfully evocative thing where it's just like what sort of things are in the woods? Why are they keeping people out? Is this different than it has been, or is this just how it is? Going into the woods here ends in you getting filled with arrows. So my question for you, Alex, is who shot the arrows?
Well, that actually depends. So is Neverwinter Wood, is that filled with like elves that are kind of like xenophobic, or like are there? I don't actually necessarily know who lives in the Neverwinter Woods.
I don't either.
Okay, well
I'll be honest. I know the Silver Marches much better than I know the coast itself.
Gotcha.
So if we were talking about, there's a couple different forests there that I know better. But anyway, sorry, second.
So maybe what's actually in the forest and that's threatening you is it could either be elves that are just like, hey, get off my territory, go away, or it could be like bandits that have like some sort of valuable item and they're like, no, we got this cool sword, get away. So
why wouldn't they wield the sword?
Because, well, okay, so let's say it's not a sword because they would use the sword, but
Hmm.
let's say it's a very expensive pendant, like it's a medallion that
Ooh.
belongs to the king,
How'd
and
they, how'd
they
they get it?
are well, they extracted they stole it from the king. They actually went into
Like,
the and they were able to go like Ocean's 11, or is it Ocean's 11, or just a secret agent drop down,
no. Oh,
steal the artifact.
wait. The descending from the ceiling. You're thinking like Mission Impossible?
Sure, maybe these bandits are actually spies for Mission Impossible.
All right, all right.
Yeah.
Ooh, so
So,
that's really interesting too, because now you've presented the option. Like, why this forest? What about this particular place, and why are they waiting for? So they've got the brooch or the amulet, sorry,
yeah.
from the king. Also, fun tidbit about the Sword Coast: there's not a lot of kingdoms, oddly enough. There's a
Huh.
lot of city states, not a lot of kingdoms.
Okay. They just really like their independence.
I guess.
Maybe it's just it's an amulet from a high up noble, so
No, I
that
mean there are kings. There are just less of them.
yeah.
So yeah, that presents a delightfully interesting question. Again, it comes to that thing of how powerful are the players? Like, would you want to throw like that actually could be a good way to sort of like tell the players like, hey, this is maybe too powerful for you.
Yeah.
Throw in that, hey, these guys have an amulet from the king. Are you sure you wanna? Because
They
amulet from
Mission
the king.
Impossible this.
Exactly. So that is an interesting interesting sort of
Yeah, I'm liking it.
let's see.
Sweet.
As far as like for I don't know this I'll be honest, this one is a little less sort of evocative for me.
Little juicy.
Let's see. See, my automatically my first temptation is to sort of buck the trend, come up with like what's a different sort of archer. But I think also one of the things to think about is letting the sort of style of arrows very much inform sort of what sort of thing it is. So describing
Ooh.
arrows as sort of
Lackluster. They are
yeah.
poorly strung together.
Yeah, exactly. Like how you describe those arrows will very much sort of color what your players are expecting when they do finally find the fire of those arrows.
I mean, these arrows, like, they could vary in size. They could be like just regular arrows, or they could be the size of javelins.
Ooh.
Who's to say it's not a giant's arrow?
Oh, it would be even more. I think the thing that would add a whole level of confusion is to have a tree that's filled with tiny arrows, medium-sized arrows, and giant arrows, and then just let the players speculate themselves into a tailspin.
Just be like, who was attacking? So we're either fighting gnomes, elves, or giants.
or
Gotcha.
or why not all three? You know.
Like, you could do all three.
All right. Well, I think that's about our time for today. I am very sorry that my technology decided to lose its marbles. I get to try and figure out what the heck happened. Yeah, this is very exciting stuff. I get to go delete 15 minutes of us being prepared. Um,
Fantastic.
the good news is that this one will just start right into it, so that will take less editing. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening. Next week,
Next,
next week you're not going to be here, right?
no, I'll be gone. Yeah.
Okay, so it'll be Jason and I next week. We might wrangle in Vaughn. I think actually I might. You know what? I might do this with Jason as well, particularly because I think it'd be interesting to see again the differences between sort of the different styles of
Oh, yeah.
of DMing. I always find that very fascinating, personally. So anyway,
Styles
everyone,
between the
have a wonderful night. Stay safe out there, and we will see you next week, or I will. All right, bye.
Bye.